Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Hi guys, you're welcome back to Bits and Breach. So if this is your first time coming to this channel, or if this is your first time seeing this channel, please hit the subscribe button and turn on the post notification. Do not forget to turn on the post notification. So I'll just go right into it. So last week we created our first resource group in Azure. You can see it here. Created a resource group, we added tags and the likes. So but a resource group by itself doesn't actually do anything for us, right? So imagine I'm working for a company that has just moved part of its infrastructure to Azure. We have applications, we have users, we have servers, but we also need somewhere to store our files, store our backups, images, and application data. Now, if this were an on-prem environment, I might start thinking about maybe a file server, SAN, or NAS. But in Azure, one of the fundamental services we use for this is Azure Storage, right? So today I'm going to create my first storage account and more importantly, understand what I'm actually configuring. So in the Azure portal, what I'm going to do first is to search for storage account, and we have a search bar here which make everything so easy. So I'm going to search for storage account. Now can you see it comes up here, and I'm going to click on this create. Now you will see the basics here: basics, advanced networking, data protection, security, encryption, tags. These are all the things we have to go through before we review and create. But let's read this. The Azure Storage is a Microsoft managed service providing cloud storage that is highly available, secure, durable, scalable, and redundant. Now these are all the advantage I said in my fourth video on Azure when I talked about moving to cloud infrastructure, right? Now Azure Storage include Azure blobs, that's object Azure data like storage and 2, Azure files, Azure queues, and Azure tables. Now, the cost of your storage account depends on the usage and the options you choose below. If you remember that time I said if you need more storage, you might as well purchase more storage from Microsoft. Now, can you see that it's automatically selected my subscription, which is what I have here, and the resource group that I already have. If I wanted to change the resource group, I have to like create a new one, right? So what I'm going to do now is I'm putting this storage account inside the resource group I created in the previous lab. Now this is where the Azure hierarchy starts becoming practical, right? So I'm going to create a name, and I'll just do Easy Lab Timmy 2026. Easy Lab Timmy 2026. Don't mind me, I'm so bad at creating names and password. So sometimes they might say it's taking, you have to create a new one, but this is not taking, so I had a few numbers, which is this. Now, unlike a resource group name, or like this, a storage account name has to be globally unique because Azure Storage Endpoint use the name as part of their URL, right? So the region is already selected, which is UK South. I'm keeping the one I selected for my lab, for my research group, yes. And for the performance, preferred storage type, I'm gonna click on, let's see, I'll just leave this as choose preferred storage. Okay, I'm gonna skip this recommended for most scenarios. Can you see that I can skip this? And redundancy, I'm just gonna click on locally redundant storage. So Azure is asking me how I want my data replicated, and I'm choosing this LRS, which means Azure maintains multiple copies of my data within the same physical data center region, right? You see this. Okay, for some reason my video stopped, and I was talking about this. You notice that we selected the LRS, which is the locally redundant storage, and that's what you're going to be using in this video. So I'm going to go to the next part, which is the advanced tab. You see from here, this advanced tab. Now you might ask me that, okay, why did I choose this LRS? So Azure maintains multiple copies of my data within the same physical data center. So but there are other options, like you see the ZRS, which is the zone redundant, the GRS, which is the geo redundant, and we can actually explore that later. I'm going to click on next and go to the advanced. This enable hierarchical namespace, I'm going to leave it. I'm just going to leave it like that. So but let's read what it says. It says hierarchical namespace complemented by data lake storage and 2 endpoint enables files and directory semantics, accelerate big data analytics workload, and enable access control list. I'm not going to leave that off, and And why would I leave that up? It's primarily used for Azure data lake storage entity, just like what it says here, and gives us this directory file system semantics and access control list capability. So we're learning general purpose Azure storage first, so we don't need it. The first option I'm seeing is this, and I'm not focusing on that. I'm just leaving it and disabled rather. So also the SFTP, I can't enable this because it's requiring me to enable this first before I enable this. So, and since I'm not enabling this, that means this can't be enabled. It says it here that SFTP can only be enabled for hierarchical namespace accounts. So I'm going to leave it. For the network file system too, I have to enable this. So I'm also going to leave it. Cross-tenant replication, it's like the same thing, but I don't actually need this for my lab. This is an advanced scenario for replicating storage data across Microsoft Entra tenants. And no, I'm not enabling this. I'm just going to leave that. So what else is there? Enable manage identity for SMB. I'm going to leave that also. I'm going to leave this as hot. Azure gives me different blob storage tiers. You see the hot. The hot is for what's it called? Data access frequently, optimized for frequently accessed data and everyday usage scenarios. While the cool is data access less frequently. While the cold is data access very rarely. And there's another one which is a long example. For our lab, I'll just keep it as hot. So Azure is asking me about the access tier. This determines how the storage is optimized based on how frequently I expect to access data. And like I said, hot is designed for frequently accessed data. So I'm keeping hot for this lab. And for the Azure files, like I said, I'm going to leave it off. I do not need this yet, but I require encryption in transit for SMB. So I'm going to keep this enabled because this is the security settings. From the name, it says encryption. So for Azure files, I'm leaving encryption in transit enabled. If you're accessing files using SMB, we want that traffic protected while it's moving across the network, right? So if you notice, everything is off. This is hot for frequently accessed data, and this is just on for security purpose, right? So the next thing I'm going to go to is networking, and I'm going to leave the default here in networking, right? Search a resource from anywhere through a public network. Not allowing access to your resource through a public network increases security risk. But for this lab, I'm going to enable public access from all networks. Why? I'm allowing public network access, but that doesn't mean I'm making the files publicly accessible. So network access and anonymous access are two different things. Later in this series, we'll lock this down using Azure networking. So just for easy access and just because of this lab, I'm going to leave this as public network access enabled, and I'm just going to leave everything here as default and go to the next tab, which is the data protection. Now data protection is where Azure give you options for protecting your data from maybe accidental deletion or overwriting. So you see something like enable soft delete for blobs, and it is enabled. There's return deleted blobs 7 is okay by me. Soft delete enables you to recover blobs that were previously marked for deletion, including blobs that were overwritten. So this 7 days, okay. So it means if I accidentally delete a blob, Azure will retain it temporarily, so I can recover it. So soft delete for containers, okay. Also this is okay. And what else? Enable soft delete for this is okay. Enable versioning for blobs. I will go ahead and enable it, and I'm sure we understand what versioning means. Different versions. Versioning allows Azure to keep previous versions of the blob when it's modified. There's versioning in SharePoint. There's versioning in even I think in Excel. You would see your previous version. Yes, Excel files get stored in SharePoint, so that's fine. So you will see. I think that's all we have to do here. Enable version level, immutability, support, enable blocks. So I'm just going to click on those three. And point in time restore, I'm going to leave it disabled. To come back to this when we are doing more advanced storage protection. So one thing I don't want to overlook here is this data protection, because imagine someone accidentally deletes an important company document. Instead of that file disappearing permanently, features such as all these sub delete, the versioning, and all that give us recovery option. So I'm enabling this feature so that you understand how Azure protects data, not just how to store it. So the next thing I'm going to do is security and encryption. So I'll just click on next. So I'm going to leave all this as default and just keep to encryption. So Azure Storage encrypts data at rest. So encryption time, I'm going to leave it as Microsoft Managed Keys. This is the simplest option. So you will eventually learn about it as you're going. Microsoft Managed Keys, customer managed keys, and all that. So I'll leave it as default, and I'll go to next is tag. So the name, I'm going to click on environment. The value, I'm going to click on lab. Remember, I selected this all before. Yeah, I selected all resource. Then owner, I'm still the person. Timmy top pair. And the last one, which is project. So these are the same tags that I use for my resource group. So I'm applying the same tags to my storage account so that I can identify which environment it belongs to, who owns it, and what project it's associated with, right? So I'll just click on review and create. So which is the next, which is also review and create. All right. Once we have created it, since it's still sorry, since it's still validated, once we have created, we'll have a resource group which you have before. Yep, this is our resource group. Can you see it? And this is our storage account. This is the location, and this is the performance standard and local redundant storage, right? And we're going to just click on create. So I'm sure that that's created. So the next thing we're going to do, we're going to go to resource. It's right here. So you see deployment to resource group RG is in progress. Deployment is in progress, alright? So it's still in progress. And yes, so you see your deployment is complete. Deployment details, give us details, blah 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 blah. And go to resource. I'm just gonna click on that. Azure Lab Team 2026. Yes, so this is our resource group. Now, oh sorry, this is our storage account as Azure Lab 2026 storage account. Now that our storage account has been created, here is where things get interesting. Now, a storage account isn't simply a big folder in the cloud. Yeah, Azure Storage actually gives us different storage services depending on the type of data we're working with. Remember that we have the Blob Storage for objects, via Azure files to share files or for file shares, and queues for messaging, and tables for no SQL data. So let's see what each of these actually does. Then we'll move into Blob Storage first, which is for objects, right? Okay, let's go. So as an Azure admin, you need to know how users and application actually interact with the storage, right? So like I said, the first thing we're going to do is our first blob, a blob storage, right? So we're going to go to data storage. From data storage, you see containers, you see classic file shares, you see queues, you see tables. Remember what I said before, right? Remember what I said when I was talking about the classic file shares for file sharing or for sharing file, the tables for no SQL data, the blob storage for objects, and all that, queues for messaging, and all those things I said before, right? So you can see everything in this place. So we're starting with containers. So you're going to click on containers. Okay. So now that we're in container, we're going to create a container, right? You see this one here, it's 9. This is today, 590. But we're going to add a container. I'm just going to name it documents. The anonymous level. Okay, that is checked, so that is fine. Okay, anonymous level. I wanted to choose public, but I'm just going to leave it as private. Specify whether data can be accessed and by default container data is private to the account owner. The system the account owner using blobs to allow anonymous read access for blobs. Use container to allow anonymous read and list access to the entire container. So I'm just going to leave that private, no anonymous link, and I'm going to click on create. So remember what we just created. We first created a storage account, right? And then from storage account we created a container, right? Now in that container we added a document, right? Now we can add other things, maybe image or any other thing. Now the storage account is the overall storage services. The container is a logical grouping for blobs. The actual files are called blobs. So it is from storage account to container to blobs. These are the actual file. The document is a blob. The logs is a blob. Remember the actual files are called blob, right? So if you're coming from an on-prem background, don't think of this like a traditional Windows folder. A container is a logical grouping of blobs inside a storage account. Remember, the containers is inside the storage account. The blob is inside the container. So, like I said, storage account, container, then blob. So I'm going to click on document. I think I've said that enough time. Then I could decide to upload something inside my. I don't know what to upload, but then I'll upload something. So I'm going to upload this. It's an image. Upload. Right. So I've successfully uploaded the blob, which is what is inside the container. So once uploaded, you see that I see my file inside the container, and that is my first blob, right? So if I click on this, I'm going to see all the information about it. I see the URL. I see the URL is carrying my lab, my storage account name, as the lab, blah blah blah. I'll see the size. Can you see the size? I'll see the last modified, which is just now. I'll see the access tier, the metadata. I'm going to see so many things about it, the versions. Okay, not previous version, but it's the new one, obviously. So now that I've uploaded my first blob, you notice that Azure isn't treating this like a traditional file server where I'm navigating through a Windows folder structure. This is object storage. So Azure stores the object and give it properties and a URL that can be used to access it. And this is one of the major differences between the traditional file storage and the blob storage, right? The way you store files is now. Okay, Now, can you see everything? This is so different from the way the Active Directory works. So different, right? So what I want to do is, since I have the URL, I'm just trying to click on the copy here, and I'm going to come to new page here to try and paste it. I said the XML file does not appear to have any style information, blah blah blah. Public access is not permitted on this storage account. Can you see this? Now remember that when I was creating my account, remember that when I created the container, I selected private access, but it didn't give me the option to select public access. So even though this blob, which is this object, has a URL, having a URL doesn't automatically mean anybody on the internet can access it, right? So this is an important security concept. So I think I'm just going to stop my video here, right? I think we've been able to create storage, create containers, and create blob inside the container. Now, do not confuse the two. Blob storage is best suited for images, for videos, for documents, for backups, for logs, application data, and maybe large amounts of data, right? Now, for object storage, which is Azure files, we would think about cloud file share, which we can access it using protocols like SMB and use it more like a traditional network file share, right? So that one is much more easier or closer to the file server experience from Active Directory if you already know about on-prem Active Directory. Now, if you don't know anything about Active Directory, you can ignore this, or you can either go to my previous video where I talk about Active Directory. I don't know if I have a video on how to share files, Windows file share, or file server experience, but hopefully that video will come up soon. So, guys, if you're coming from a traditional IT like me, this is one of the easiest ways to understand the difference. Azure Files is much closer to the traditional file server experience, while Blob Storage is basically for object storage. It's designed for structured data. You see now, what I uploaded here was my picture, right? Alright, so guys, I'll say thank you guys for watching. In my next video, which is part 3, we're going to be creating maybe Azure File. Maybe we're going to go deeper into Azure, right? Maybe we're going to create something like Azure role-based access control plus Microsoft Entra ID. So maybe we'd learn the authentication and authorization, which is who are you, authorization, what are you allowed to do, right? But then, so far we have created the storage, uploaded the file, and I think this is where we're going to end our video for today. If you're yet to subscribe, please click on the subscribe button, turn on the post notification, and drop me a comment of what you'd like to understand or if you're confused about anything, and I'll be glad to explain. Thank you guys for watching again. I'll see you in my next video. Bye.